So first I want to thank everyone for being here this evening, and Officer Daly, who's a close friend, for helping organize tonight. We believe that Eli's neshama, which is the Hebrew word for soul, is eternal. The soul is indestructible. Everyone here has a body. Raise your hand. Everyone here have a soul? That's something inside of you. If you want to make the world a better place, that means you have a soul. How many of you want to make the world a better place? There you go. And we come into this world, by divine gift. God brings us into this world. We don't know how many days or years we're blessed to be in this world, but we have the opportunity every day to try to make the world extraordinary, to touch the world each day in a way that's totally unique and helps uplift the world around us. And certainly Eli was a person who we never can control how many years we live in the world. We can control what we do with our days. And one of the greatest blessings is to say that somebody has not length of years, but length of days. We don't just let time go by. I'll ask you, what do you do today? I don't remember. But we have to think about, how are we going to be remembered? What are we doing today that is worthy of future memory? And I always sense that Eli was a person who, when you met him, his soul lifted you up. He would oftentimes, by the way, come into this sanctuary, and I still remember he would always sit right there. He would come for a yurtzeit or two, very unassuming. I'd ask him if he wanted to come up and lead service, and even though he could lead the service, he's like, "No, it's okay, Rabbi." He had a great smile and just a wonderful, strong spirit, and it's just an honor to know him. And hopefully this evening will be a way to help elevate his soul. We do believe that he hears the words that we share tonight, and that's not because this is being recorded. It's a different kind of hearing. He's aware of what's going on. And the words that we share and the way that we carry his spirit forward is a way that his soul continues to be a source of blessing to us.
My name is Robert Daly. I've been a police officer here in Stamford for the past 32 years, going on my 33rd year next week. And I want to tell you how I met Eli. So back in the mid-90s, one of our sergeants, Gary Perna, some guys, people here don't know, was Vince McMahon's trainer. He said to us, pick a core group of police officers that you feel safe coming to our gym. I'll give them 24-hour access. I was granted that access. So one day I'm in the gym, and I see this guy in a wheelchair. Watch him. I'm like, oh my God. He's going from lat pull downs. So he's on his wheelchair, he jumps on that thing, boom, 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 boom. Then he goes over to the presses, you gotta go up that little incline there, and he's going presses, he's going back and forth. I'm like, oh my God, who is this guy? Is he a wrestler? Or is he part of the whole thing? I had no idea. So in 2007, I actually met him officially through Jason, who used to work in your guys' mill. And he introduced me to him. At that point, I had bought a business, and I had Eli help me with some graphic things. And we just developed a friendship after that. And we went on many outings to Flushing, to the Bronx, to different places to eat. I had him to my house to eat. I helped him however I could. And he's just an amazing human being. Now look, you guys spent a lot more time than I did, but my times were memorable. And I can tell you like a couple of times. So one instance, and this is where Mike says he has like Jedi powers. And I truly believe he's like a Jedi. So it's New Year's Day. We're in Flushing, Queens. We're going to this restaurant, a Korean restaurant. We're meeting a friend of mine and his family, us, and Eli came with us, right? Because Eli was part of our family. So we're driving, we're almost at the restaurant, so my friend called me, goes, oh my God, there's like no parking. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no parking? He goes, I can't find it. I've been around the block 10 times. I'm like, 3 blocks out, I can't find any parking. I said, well, we're turning down the street now. Eli's in the front seat. Eli goes, stop the car. Like, okay, he points to this white van, he goes, he's leaving. The car doesn't have any lights on, all of a sudden the van pulls out, we were parked right in front of the restaurant. And I'm like, these are Jedi powers. I've been to the Bronx with him. If any of you guys ever go to the Bronx, the Arthur Avenue, 187th Street area, there's never parking unless you go at like 9 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. But when you do that, you can't have lunch. Well, when you go with Eli, and Eli doesn't look for handicap parking space, even though he has his placard, he says, we'll find a space. Sure enough, every time I went with him, we found a spot that was like perfect. Unfortunately, I got the call back in December from Mark that he couldn't get in touch with Eli. Now, a couple days before, we were having dinner in Flushing. And we had a great meal, and we left, and I had my nephew with me, who is now in the United States Marine Corps, and him and Eli, they connected right away. We went on a food tour with Eli, which was, listen, bring digestive enzymes if he ever took you on those food tours, because it was crazy. So a couple days before Halloween, we went on this tour, and we ate at like probably 8 or 9 different places. So Emmanuel and Eli developed this bond over this little food trip. And Eli was talking to him and said, he was taking photography in school. So he says, so Eli said, I'd really like to teach you how to take photos. So they met a couple times downtown, they took photos, and he was always amazed. Now this kid is quick. He was always amazed how fast he could move in his wheelchair. He's like a race car in that thing. So what happened? So we go to dinner that night, and they talk about him taking him to see the Rockefeller Christmas tree. And Eli was going to teach him to take photo angles of the tree. So he was all for that. So they were doing that a couple days after Christmas. So Eli contacts me the next day or Monday. Hey, we had a great time, this and that. He goes, listen, my brother and I want to see the madness in the Bronx on Christmas Eve. So every year for like the last 15, 20 years, I go down there and get my last minute stuff for Christmas dinner. So Eli and Mark wanted to join us. So I said, absolutely. I said, Eli, I go there. I got to be there like by 5:15 in the morning. No problem. He's got that raspy voice, whatever. So I said, okay, perfect. So what happens? So we make that plan. And we'd actually gone the morning that he passed, or that we knew he passed. We sent him pictures from the Bronx. I have Emmanuel send him pictures from the Bronx, sausages and different things hanging and meats and stuff like that. And there's no response. And I'm like, that's a little strange. I figured he'd be like, oh, you went without me or something like that. Nothing. So I'm now on, probably for the second time in my life, the Long Island Ferry. And I'm leaving Bridgeport Harbor to go to Long Island to get Christmas dessert from a friend of mine who's one of the top chefs in this country, if not the world. Eli has been that's his gift every year at Christmas, even though he doesn't celebrate Christmas, but Eli celebrates everything food related. That's what I learned. So I was getting him a bûche de Noël, and that's the French Yule log, which we call a Yule log here in America, for Christmas Eve or Christmas Day dinner. It's normally eaten on Christmas Eve. We're pulling out, Mark calls me. He says, hey, I can't get in touch with my brother. And I got this sick feeling in my stomach because he didn't respond to the pictures I sent him earlier. So I said, okay. So I called one of my coworkers who knows Eli well. He goes, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going into a meeting, but I can do it as soon as I get out. And I'm like, you know what? I know Ramon's number. So Ramon was sitting over here, who I'd like to thank for me putting him through a horrible thing. I called him and I said, Ramon, have you seen Eli? He goes, I haven't seen him today, but I saw him with one of the WWE people on the day before that. I think it was the day before that, like 2 days prior. 2 days before. So somebody from WWE had met him there. They were going to go have like a little holiday lunch downtown. So he spoke to him. So he goes, I'm downstairs in the garage. Let me. And I don't want to tell you something to disturb you, but I just want to tell you how this happened and how devastating it was. So he checks, he goes, oh, his car's here. So I said, well, can you go upstairs and knock on the door? He goes, I'll call you right back. So Ramon calls me, and I can tell in his voice, he goes, he's not answering the door. I said to him that I had already spoken to Mark, and it was a little, it was a little stressful. I said, listen, as a police officer, I'm telling you, open his door, make sure he's not in trouble. He opens the door, I'm on the phone with him. He calls out his name twice. He says, it's him. He says, it's me, Ramon. Then I hear this gasp, and I'll leave the rest out. But I told him, get downstairs, I'll send help. So I called in an airstrike. I called police, fire, EMS, everybody I could to get there. Code 3 as fast as you can. So then I called another friend of mine that I knew that was coming on, and he's a detective. And he knows Eli because Eli and Mike actually met with him, and we were going over designing T-shirts for the military, for like a fundraiser for the military. So he jumps up, he goes right to his car, he goes racing over there, and he calls me back and he says, "I'm sorry." I'll never forget that. But now I have to call Mark. And it's tough. I'm in the ferry in the middle of Long Island. I have an 18-year-old with me who loves Eli and is now just like in shock because I told him he's not with us. So, I call Mark, I give Mark the news. And I'm doing this all from Long Island Sound. And I'll never forget that day as long as I live. So, I end up, I contacted Rabbi Cohen. I said, "This has just happened. Can you please go over and say a prayer?" He goes over, he says a prayer. At the end of the day, it was tragic. Here's a guy that was going to be 50 years old last week. Healthy guy. Other than that wheelchair didn't stop him from doing anything. The stories of being in Morocco, where he probably shouldn't be, for being of the Jewish faith, because they don't really like Jewish people there, from what I understand, but I've never been there.
They do, by the way.
Okay, well that's good. But you know what? If you hear the stories from Eli, and maybe you guys are privy to some of these stories, he would go down to the docks, he'd meet with fishermen, buy fish, he would go to the back of the restaurants and tell the people, "Can you cook this and we have lunch together?" Who does that? I'm not buying anything ready and sharing it with somebody when they're there to serve me, but not Eli. Eli, I will say, is one of the kindest souls going. There was an incident once where his neighbor, who was severely mentally ill, started throwing things at him. Potted plants from his balcony to Eli's balcony. Eli was just out there minding his own business Saturday night. He calls me in a panic. I've never seen Eli in a panic ever, but I could tell in his voice. I go over there, we get this guy, we arrest him, we bring Eli in, we got to take a statement from you, no problem. Is there anything we can do for you? He goes, "Yeah, let's go to dinner." He goes, "I'm hungry." So meanwhile, this guy threatened to kill him, was throwing things at him, could have killed him on his balcony. He wanted to go to dinner. That's the Eli that I know and love. We've had him to our house. We talked about this at dinner earlier. We've had 2 dogs since we've known Eli. These dogs, as soon as he would show up, would gravitate to him, jump on his lap, because they're small dogs, and never leave him. Because he's such a good soul. He's just an amazing human being. So, I don't know what else to say other than, he's probably with us in this room right now. He was probably with us at dinner. He's probably in all different places. I will say this, one of the kindest human beings I ever met, when I talk to him about people, if you want to be like somebody, be like Eli. He was a kind soul, a beautiful person, smart, very talented, as we all know here. He was very talented. I saw something in his apartment when I was helping Mark clean some stuff out, and there's a photograph. And if one of you guys can track this down for me, I want this poster. It was half Vince McMahon and half Shane McMahon. And it was signed by Shane. And it said, "Eli, thanks for making me look so good." And signed it. And you know what? That was amazing. And in this poster, the graphics on it is amazing. He made Christmas cards for me, for my business. He helped me with so many little things. You don't want to do this, let's do that. And this and that. He was just a great all-around friend. I did Toys for Tots events with WWE with you guys. He would come, and he would just be in the background. If you need anything, let me know. I can't say what a loss, not only for me and my family, but for your family, the WWE family. He worked there a long time. He left. But he was always there. I bet you, you probably still talk about him today because he's one of those people that, how do you forget him? Like, he's one of those people that you meet in your life that until you take your last breath, you'll know him. You'll remember him because he was such a kind and good person. And he was funny, and he just, the things he blurted out sometimes, you're like, my God, what are you even saying? But it was just great. And I'm honored to be here today. Unfortunately, I was asked to do something that I'll never forget, but I'm glad I could do it for Mark and his family, because I think I did it to the best of my ability, and I got the best personnel there to make sure that, nothing criminally happened to him. It was just medically, and I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for, having him in your family for so long, and for our family, how we were able to spend time with him. And it wasn't enough. It's never enough time. One other story. I have a friend who's a doctor, whose wife's from Taiwan. She brings her father, speaks no English, to my house for a barbecue. I bring Eli. Well, Eli says, I gotta make tea for everybody. Now, I think everybody in this room has probably had a cup of tea. So, they're there, and this guy really speaks no English. Eli really speaks no Taiwanese. But he's making this guy tea. They are like having this conversation. We don't even know who understands who. But at the very end, through his daughter, my friend's wife, she goes, my dad wants you to come to Taiwan and spend time at their house. And he will take you for tea there. So again, he meets people. If it's your dog, if it's a person that doesn't speak English, they just gravitate to him. They don't know how to walk away from him. How do you walk away from Eli? You really can't, because he's just an amazing soul. So I don't want to talk any longer. I thank you for all your time, and I just want to say that you worked with an incredible human, and I hope you guys remember that for the rest of your lives.
But Eli was my younger brother, as I think you all know now, and he wasn't just my brother. He was really like how do I get through this? He was really like a best friend to me. We spent a lot of time together. We did a lot together. And he was the most positive person I really knew in my life. Even though he had the right to complain, I think he never ever complained about anything. He really didn't. And he was fearless. I think you kind of alluded to that. I want to add something to what you said about the incident in his apartment with the crazy man next door. One of my friends asked Eli once, in all your travels in all the world, have you ever had an issue? Has anybody ever done anything or robbed him or attacked him? He said never. In all his travels in the whole world, and he's been to some crazy places, that incident that you discussed, Robert, was the only time in his whole life that he felt afraid. And I think that's why he had a trust in humanity in general. He believed in people, he trusted people. I am certainly not that way. But what's your password? And in my life I found that, and this works both ways, a lot of my good friends, and Jim is here today, a lot of my good friends became very good friends with Eli, and vice versa. I feel like through Eli I made friends for life. Robert and Mike, where's Deli? And Deli. And I think Stu, I think we're onto something here with Stu. I think it's very special. So my friend, last week was Eli's birthday. On the 25th would have been Eli's 50th birthday. And I spent the day speaking to a lot of people in the US and Israel. And one of my friends said something very interesting. And he said, if Eli was sitting in a room with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Elon Musk, they would be fascinated by his stories. And I think that's true. I want to talk a little bit about Eli's childhood and why he became who he was. Eli had a very difficult childhood. He had a bone disease called osteogenesis imperfecta. So when he was very young, any of us in this room, if we played ball and we fell down, we would get up and keep running. If Eli fell down, he would break his leg. And it happened many, many times. And when he got a cast, it wasn't a cast like most of us would have. It's a cast where it covered both his legs, and he would have to be in a lying position for sometimes 2 months at a time. I think because of that, he really appreciated the freedom that came with getting in his car. He loved getting in the car and just going for a ride and let's see what happens. And one thing that we had, again, my daughter Chloe and myself and Eli, we had a special thing where we would just get in the car and just drive. Who knows? And we found the most beautiful places. We found the most amazing beach 20 minutes from my house. I lived there for 30 years. I never knew existed. And only because of these rides with Eli, we found a special place. And then I won't even get into the food. I mean, my daughter was a foodie because of Eli, because we would go to restaurants. And Eli was a grazer. He wasn't a big guy. He couldn't eat a lot in one sitting like some of us can. But he would eat a little bit, but he would eat all day long. And he loved that. And, I think it made my daughter a foodie, which I think is great. Last summer, I got to do something special with Eli. We only did it once, but him and I went on a 3-week trip to California together, just the two of us, and we drove up and down the coast. And this is where that freedom comes into play. We drove, I don't know how many, couple of thousand miles. We drove from LA all the way up to the Redwoods and back, and we hit the sequoias, his favorite thing with nature, as some of you probably know. And I didn't drive for a minute. He drove every mile of that entire trip. And he loved it. He just loved the freedom of getting in the car because of his difficult childhood, I think. He loved getting in the car, getting behind that wheel. And the fact that he could drive with the hand controls, to him, meant everything. And now I'll tell you a couple of stories about traveling with Eli. So, as I alluded to, I'm not the most trusting person in the world, so Eli and I are now going through security at LaGuardia, going to California. I take my wallet and my stuff, I shove it in my bag, I say, but I'll make sure it's secure. What does Eli do? He takes his wallet, his phone, he throws it in the bin, there's money sticking out, he's putting it through the what do you call it, the machine that scans it, right? I'm like, dude, put your wallet in the bag, somebody's gonna steal it. No one's gonna touch it. I'm like, but he doesn't go through regular security. They take him off to the side, and they're checking and scanning. In the meantime, his stuff is sitting there for 15 minutes. And I'm like, really? They're not gonna? No one's gonna touch it. That's Eli, right? Just trusting humankind. I've had a couple of stories where I wasn't involved in, and they usually involve China. So Eli loved China, as you guys know. He loved traveling to China. He loved the tea. So Eli wanted to go to this one specific mountain that grew this one specific tea. I couldn't give you the name. No one speaks English now at this place. He's in a very remote place, there's no tourists. And he's trying to take a cab to the entrance of the tea place. And the cab driver's like, no, you can't go there. No. He's like, no, just, and somehow he communicates to him, take me there and I'll figure it out. The cab driver drives him to the entrance of the tea place. Wouldn't you know it, there's two guys standing there with this contraption where Eli can sit in this contraption and they put the thing on their shoulders and they carry him the whole way up the mountain and back. And I'm talking about through streams and rocks and hills, and there was no way he could do this on his own, obviously. But he did it. I think that one story about his travels just blows my mind. I think it's amazing. Another story, Eli takes the train from here in Stanford to Manhattan, right? So they have a little handicap section where he can sit with his wheelchair. So he gets on the train, and there's a guy there with his bike. And the guy sees Eli, and he jumps up, he's like, oh my God, I'm sorry, I took the space. He's moving the bike. This gentleman, his name is Chang Len, he's Chinese. And next thing you know, the two of them are traveling, oh, you're here. Oh my God, I just noticed. Dude, I didn't even notice you until now. Thank you. I'm telling you a story. Yeah. That's amazing. I will look forward to it if you want. I'll never forget the story. And the next thing you know, the two of them, I'll let you tell the rest of it. They're traveling in China and meeting your family, and I heard all the stories, and it was just amazing. Wow. I really didn't realize it was here. Wow. And last story about China. So Eli really wouldn't plan his day. He has the same story every day. I woke up in the morning, I don't know what I'm doing that day. And one of my favorite stories also, he would get up, he'd go to breakfast in the hotel, and he'd meet some guy. And of course they start talking. What are you into? Oh, I like tea. You like tea? My uncle has a tea store. Next thing you know, they're in the tea store, they're drinking tea all day. The family invites him to their house that evening for dinner. I don't know what better way to summarize Eli, but that's pretty much about it. So I want to thank you all for coming. It's really amazing. I mean, you're all very special to him, obviously, and I know you have. I've already heard many stories, and I think it's amazing. I'm glad to all know you, and thank you very much. And I think my son wants to, I'll let you continue. Thank you, guys.
I'm Justin. I'm Eli's nephew, and it's very hard for me. Hard for us all. But there's really one story that really makes Eli stick out to me. One day, he was picking me up from school. He happened to be staying over my house on that Monday, and I stayed after school for a little bit, and he drove me home from school. And you guys know Eli loves his music, his food, whatever. And that ride actually introduced me to Tool. If you guys don't know that, it's a very good band. But and what happened was, on that ride home, there was a garbage can that was blown into the middle of the road. And a lot of people would have been just like, oh, what does this do? What is this doing here? Why is that there? I'm gonna get mad at the person living there for leaving it in the middle of the road. But Eli actually spent his time, pulled over to the side of the road, and had me get out of the car and move it back to where it's supposed to be. And honestly, like that, I think that emulates Eli perfectly. Because there's, I think like at the 85-90% of the people, the 90% of people ever would have just gotten pissed and kept driving. He actually took the time out of his day and had me move it to the side of the road. And I think that's honestly just completely amazing. And another thing that no one else does is that one day last summer I always called him Uncle Eli. What else would I call him? He told me, and I quote, Justin, you can keep calling me Uncle Eli, and I'll still continue to be your uncle, or you call me Eli, and I'll start being your friend. And let me just tell you, I started calling him Eli, and our friendship now was completely. I love it. It wasn't bad before. It was amazing, but now I'm like actually being his friend. Actually, what it's like to really know him. And even though it was 3 months after that, it was a completely new person. I knew what he was really like. I wasn't his nephew anymore. I was really his friend, and that is just completely amazing to me. And I'd like to give time for other people to speak, so I leave it off on this note. I don't know if you guys recognize this watch, but it's actually Eli's, and I love it. I wear it all. I'm so glad that I actually was able to keep it, and I always wear it to special occasions, just so it's like my little token of that he's with me.
So I have something premeditated here, unlike you guys. And you also have Eli's whip, by the way, so that car has seen some traction. Thank you to everyone who made time to join us tonight to honor this incredible soul. He lived life to the fullest. He loved life, art, design, photography, music, food, camping, and of course travel. His love for travel and exploration exceeded most, with multiple trips to Asia, Europe, Africa, South America, and of course North America. He documented his travels with his amazing photography. Despite his physical limitations, he always managed to conquer the obstacles that might obstruct his goals that he set in place. If he wanted to travel to the top of a mountain made of stairs, somehow he made it a reality and would be carried up like a king in a palanquin. I regret not having the opportunity to travel more with him, but the trips we did have together were always worth it. There were so many places that we wanted to visit together on our bucket list. For instance, seeing the Aurora Borealis. He would say, "Come on, Dilly, yalla, yalla. Let's do this, time's a wasting, yalla." Unfortunately, he was right, and we ran out of time. I could say the time that we did have together was never wasted. We had a weekly tradition of getting together on Thursday nights sometimes to play music, other times we would have jam sessions with friends. Thursday nights became a staple for having a good time. Often he would invite friends over to play video games or watch a movie and enjoy a tea session. Regardless, Eli's little apartment became a sanctuary for so many, including myself. If you were ever having a stressful week, or if you're having trouble with life in general, spending time at Eli's always guaranteed. You would forget about your troubles and live in the moment. He was a warm soul and always welcomed people into his life. There was always plenty of tea to go around for everyone. Suitcases. I miss him tremendously, and I'm sure most of us who knew him do too. He left us such a void in our hearts, which would be so very difficult to fill. Eli was more than just a friend, he was an inspiration. An inspiration to be a better person, to put others first, to listen and to be mindful. May we live our lives into the fullest as he did. Rest in peace, my beautiful friend.
I might not be the most obvious choice to speak. I didn't work in creative services, although I feel like I kind of did. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a lawyer at WWE, and I've worked with almost everybody out there for the 21 years that I've been at WWE, and it's definitely a family. Hearing you, his brother, speak tonight actually brought back a piece of him to me, because you are so much like him. And if we miss him, seeing you just brought it back tonight. Your mannerisms, your voice, your face, it's just a beautiful reminder of the beautiful man that Eli was. I think the common thread here is that he made meaningful connections with every single person he met. I always felt that. This is the days before COVID, when he worked at WWE, we weren't flex. We were all in every day, and it's crazy there, and it still is, but it was really crazy then. And I'd be running around to see Mook or Diane Newton or Joe Giorno or Gail Tarzia about something that we were creating. And inevitably I would walk by Eli, and I would go in, and everything suspended the minute I walked into what I like to think of as his den. Yes, he had his tea going, and we could talk about the tea, but he made a meaningful connection with me where it was never just superficial conversation, and it stopped being about work, and it started being about life. I talked about my brother and string theory abstract physics with him, which, by the way, was a passion of his, which I never knew about, and we exchanged articles for years about string theory after one conversation. I told him that I had never been to Israel. I'm Jewish. My daughter actually had her baby naming right here, 19 years ago. And I had spoken about the fact that I never got to Israel. And of course, he went many times. Never asked him for a thing. He came back the very next trip from Israel with a necklace for me from Israel, so I would have a direct connection there. The funniest story is I'll never forget is he liked to always explore and teach. And I remember we were doing a SummerSlam poster, and I don't remember if it was Trish Stratus or somebody, but we had a totally inappropriate story for this room. We had a banner going across the chest, and he was explaining how he had moved part of the breast from bottom to top and all the things that he could do with art. I never looked at a photograph again and believed it to be real or accurate. But my point being, when I was signing the book that Deli gave me to sign and pass around, and I didn't just go and sign. I looked first at all the pages, and of course I couldn't understand the Hebrew. I could read it, I can't translate it. But everybody's stories were consistently always about the meaningful connection that he had made with them. It was never superficial. Every single one of you out there has some personal story where he took interest in what you said. And he cared about it, he thought about it, he came back to you on it, he did research on it, or he gave you something that related to it, and he just made your connection with him felt special and warm, and the wheelchair never confined that man. One iota. And if we could live the rest of our lives like he did in 1 year, we'd be blessed, and we would approach life in a way that we should, because he certainly did. And I know how much he loved all of you. And as a slight outsider, but not total outsider of your department, which is always so loving and warm and welcoming and fun and, you know, dark and cool lights and cool art, and he was always the heart of that. And you were absolutely blessed to have him growing up, and you as an uncle, but we were blessed to have him as part of our family, and as you can see, we are a close family. But just seeing you actually really brought a lot back to me, so, and I'm sure as it did for everybody here, so that's all I wanted to say.
Excuse me, forgive me. Eli was probably one of the most amazing people I've ever met. Started at WWE 14 years ago. I worked hard to get that job there, so I was always running and gunning through the halls and doing what I could to, you know, make a name for myself. But Eli always, you know, he was that inviting, always come to my office, come into my office, and, you know, like, I don't have time today. He's like, sit down and have tea. So you sit down and you have tea with Eli, and you just kind of like, you know, like you said, everybody says, he talks to you, he learns about you, he wants to know about you. And in my time with him, I learned that everybody is similar. We are all similar in certain ways, and he loved to share his culture, and I never had that. Like, you know, you meet your people, you meet your friends, you meet people from your demographic, but to have somebody outside of that bring you into their life, and, you know, you sit down with him and you have tea, and he tells you about the tea. He explains to you about, you know, the mountain it came from, or, you know, the stories, and he's showing you the pictures of China, and, you know, and you're literally like blown away because nothing stopped him, you know. I was diabetic when I first got there, and I was very in tune with my body, so I was kind of like, you know, trying to wean off of, you know, insulin and all types of crazy stuff. But I sat down and I had tea with him one day, and I never forget it. I got up and I walked down the hallway, and I was like, I stopped and I came back and I was like, what is in this tea? Like, and he's like, yeah, and we had tea together because it was just such an uplifting kind of experience. So we've gone to trips, you know, Flushing, New York. We go have food, and we'll be in the most back remote place, and like we're literally walking through, and people are looking at us like, what are you doing here? And we would sit there and he'd be like, yeah, give me that. Like, we did not know anything on the menu. And I never forget, one of my favorite stories with him is we went to the food hall in Flushing, and so there's all the vendors going around, so we're just going to different vendors buying stuff. And the guy looks at him and he's like, you want it spicy? And Eli's like, yeah, too spicy. So he's like, medium spicy. And so the guy goes, okay. And the grin on his face said it all. So he literally gives us our food. We sit back. I got the chopsticks. I grab a piece of meat. And this is the most spiciest thing I've ever eaten in my life. It's like literally lava. And so now I'm looking at Eli like, I don't know if I can eat this because this thing is like, and he takes a bite of it and he looks at me and we're literally sweating. And we turn and look at the guy and the guy's like this. And I'm like, yeah, I can't with you. We literally like, every trip was an adventure. I got times where I've broken out and literally had to take Benadryl, and I don't know what I ate that would have killed me. But with him, it was okay, you know. We always felt at home. We would wait for him to come back because as soon as he would come back, we would be there at his house. Like, what did we miss? What did you see? You know, he was my window to the world, and I'll take that with me. You know, I will take everything that he shared with me, I will take it, and I will try to instill that in everybody I meet going forward. Try to instill it in my children. You know, he was a good person, and we had a lot of great times together. We've done a lot of amazing things together. Nothing's ever stopped him. You know, we've gone places, and I always say it's the funniest thing because he's always the spectacle, and I was like, it was me and my friend was, you know, big guy, tattoos, and we were going to the knife show, because Eli loved knives, and he loved different types of knives, and he loved fine craftsmanship. Anything that was done craftsmanship, he loved it, and we're walking behind him, and everybody's just looking at him. And I realized, I looked at my friend, I was like, everybody's wondering who he is. Because we look like his security team guy. And he's literally like going, and I'm like, everybody's wondering, who is this guy? You know? And that's the more he came over. He was an amazing soul. He was literally, like I said, one of the best people I've ever met. And I drink tea every day. Every day. I won't skip out. That's the one thing I don't skip out on. But I love that man. So blessings to you, you know, your family. And there's never gonna be another one of those. So love you guys.
This was actually a letter that I actually meant to send Mark, but I never got sort of a draft that I really liked, but I guess I'll share what I have of it here today. So I'm Penguin. As Mark mentioned, I'm the guy who I was living in Norwalk at the time, and I was biking, I got on the train, Metro North at South Norwalk, and then at Stamford, of course, Eli comes on. And on the Metro North trains, the place where you store your bike is also where wheelchair storage is. Of course, wheelchairs take preference. And so, like Mark said, you know, he comes on, and I spring up, oh, I'm so sorry, you move the bike. And Eli, of course, being the genial man that he is, immediately he starts striking up a conversation. Oh, don't worry about it. You know, and then we start talking. And it was this was fall of 2017. This was right at the end of September. And as we were talking, we first talked about sort of very everyday conversations. It was like work, so at the time, I was still working at the WWE. So we talked a little bit about that. Very rapidly, of course, as everyone there has mentioned, it turned to tea. Chinese tea is a very, very large hobby of his, one of his great loves in life. The ride from Stamford to New York is about an hour. That was probably the shortest hour ever in my life. And it started, you know, with that idle chat about work and then tea, and it became ever more involved. I happened to read and write Chinese, and so he started, you know, asking me a lot of questions about, oh, what is this, what is this, what is this? And of course, I was astounded by how much he knew. His knowledge of Chinese tea far outpaced my own, and as we would later discover, basically outpaced everyone's that we met in China. We had these very, very well conversations, and at the end of it, we were making plans. You know, this is a guy I just met maybe about 30 minutes before that to go to China. And before we had stepped out onto the bustling platform of Grand Central, we exchanged numbers. And we said, you know, this is going to happen. We didn't know when, but it's going to happen. And my second meeting with Eli was actually just as much of a whirlwind. I think I actually recognized a couple of familiar faces from there. He invited me out to a forest for tea. And this is going to, I think, what Mark was talking about with his very trusting nature. He sort of just, you know, he just assumed, hey, I'll just invite this person that I've met, you know, for all of, again, 1 hour to a forest to have tea. And I was a little bit worried because he's a very nice guy. He's someone I've known for 1 hour and asking me to go to a remote forest. So it's not really that far, but so it's a remote forest that's far from any, like, it's about, you know, an hour drive away from a major city. And he works at the WWE. And so, of course, my impression as a layman of the WWE is having the 6'10" Undertaker there with an axe the size of my face, just waiting there to axe murder me, because who knows, it's in the middle of the forest. This guy in WWE, but of course, no axe murdering happened that day. We became very, very good friends. And we just kept in touch. He would invite me to his apartment in Stamford, and we talk about all the things that everyone here has already spoken about tea, about craftsmanship, about so many other things. And we kept talking about China. And this idle conversation, this one little thing that we had talked about on the train became real. We talked about sort of going to the tea leaves where they actually picked them down in the south of China and doing that. And all the sort of sites and places that we could go all along the way. And it really became increasingly apparent this was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. The opportunity came as I prepared to leave my job at the time. It was October 2018. We sort of sat down, yes, this is happening. We're going to China together. And we started up in the north, up in Beijing. Eli got there just a couple days before I did. And when I got there, he already had friends. He already had friends. We stayed at a hotel. There was this cafe that was maybe just about 2 blocks down. It was run by this huge Mongolian guy, right? He's big. He's got that sort of old man strength, that sort of like that sort of big imposing nature. But of course he's there, talking with Eli, who doesn't speak Chinese, of course, and still somehow is communicating with this man and giving him all sorts of free food. In fact, actually, I don't think for my entire time in Beijing I paid for a single one of my breakfasts. It was just him, as long as it was with Eli, right? He just made fast friends with everyone. And so I'll sort of cut short some of the details of the China trip because I don't want to be here for too long. But we went from Beijing to Hangzhou, where we visited a tea shop where Eli had actually visited years before. Then from there we went to Shanghai, which is where most of my family is, and he and I shared dinner with my extended family there. From Shanghai we went to Kunming, which is down south, very, very close to the border. And then from there we made our way to another smaller town in the same region called Dali. And everywhere we went was made magical by Eli just being there. The Hangzhou tea shop, they were floored by Eli being there because they actually hadn't remembered that he had been there just a couple of years before. But he had taken pictures of them, of course, all the great pictures he has always taken everywhere. And he showed them a picture of him with their shop owner, and they were just amazed. Wow, he came back. You remember? There was a guitarist that we met in Dali, which is the small little town I was talking about. This guy was an interesting character in and of himself. He was someone who was living in an army, he was traveling all around China. He made his living by just playing music. And this interesting man, this man would be the life of the other party, was blown away by Eli. And all of a sudden, everything was about Eli. And he was talking in his own halting English, trying to get everything he knew, everything he could from Eli, because it was just so fascinating seeing Eli, talking with him, and all the experiences he had. And everywhere, of course, we drank tea, lots of it. Everywhere, when I was translating for Eli, as soon as it came to tea, there was no longer any need to translate. He knew the Chinese terms. He knew them better than I did. And of course, the other person would walk away absolutely stunned. There's so much. There's so many details, so much richness, exquisiteness in every nook and corner of our trip. And of course, it was one of the best trips I've ever taken in my life. We had always planned another trip to China, but then COVID hit, and then Eli passed away. And writing this down reminds me of just how much Eli was as a human, and of the deep sense of the loss that his passing brings. Time and again, onlookers everywhere around the world, everywhere in China, would be slack-jawed at just how much Eli did, right? Again, these were people who couldn't even really speak his language, he would speak their language, but even through that haltiness, they were able to see just how special this soul was. And it wasn't just a matter of being amazed that Eli in a wheelchair could go all the places that someone with full use of the legs could go. It was that he was doing more. He was doing more than that. It was everywhere he went, in one people, Mongolian shopkeeper in Hangzhou, wandering guitarist in Dali. There was a nude performing artist in Taiwan who was just hugging everyone on the street. And of course, she hugged Eli. And when she went on national TV for an interview, the one person she talks about is Eli. He's hugging. Eli he's a very, very magical person. And I'm very, very, very sorry to see him go. I do feel very blessed, thankful for the amount of time I was able to spend with him.
I think I'm the WWE guy who was with him on his last day. So I think maybe I could share some of that today with you guys. So, my story is not unique to anything else we've heard. Eli he's a mentor for me, and I met him at a really young age. And I thought I knew everything about the world, and it was just so great when you come to an office at WWE and it's so frantic and hectic. This guy is just mentally set. People are freaking out. This guy is just. And I have all the same stories. Drinking tea and our eyes are going wide. I'm like, what is in this tea? So I left WWE, and it was some years. We catch up here and there, be here, years from there, be around, and most of the time it was catching up in Flushing. So my wife and I would always go to Flushing. We connected over China. I had a friend in China. When he was talking about going, he went and came back. I was like, I really should go visit my friend. He gave me a huge list. He was like, all right, man, Long Jin is going to be in season that year, so we're going to do this, that. I got you. Come back with a ton of stuff. So call him up, and we're missing each other. And it's like, oh, can you do this day? I can't do this. I got to do that day. Okay. So we finally get together. And the reason I wanted to get together is because, my wife and I were expecting a son, and that's 4 months ago. He was born, and I just wanted to tell him to share that because we connected over so many things. I just felt like I really grew up with Eli, and I grew into the person I am today because of him. It was the travel, it was the music, the stressful events at WWE. Oh, come on over, and we play music. And this guy, I didn't hear anyone talk about it, but he was one of the most amazing drummers I've ever met in my life. And you talk about a guy who, by every ounce and every means, you would not expect. And I'd see this kid, and I was like, "You play?" And I go, "Yeah, man. I play, you play, yeah, I play." Oh my God, we played Tool, we played Mountain. Oh, Brian, you gotta get into Dream Theater. Oh, Dream Theater? I'm not, okay. Oh yeah, no, trust me. So he's like, oh, they're really heavy. They got heavy stuff. No, yeah, trust me. So we cruise around and we just play music, after work, and it was really great. So, I come that day, and we just instantly, it's like you never miss a beat. You come back, and if you haven't seen him in a year, it's just you just pick up right where you left off with him. That's why I knew it was a really special friendship. So, want to look at photos, Ryan, of where you've been traveling? And then he showed me this, where he was carried, and he was like, let me pull up this book. And he was like, I'll show you exactly where we're going to drink tea from right here. Go ahead, read about it. And so I'd sit there, read this book while he prepared. I had so many questions. He's like, wait. He's like, oh, I got this special board cake. And I was like, oh, really? He's like, it's in the, hold on, I got another book here. Read it. Go read about this board cake right here. I was like, okay. So we're just having tea, and then we were like, do you want to eat? And he was like, oh, let's go out to lunch. So we went to the ramen spot down the street, and again, this is another, not a unique story, a dog. I remember specifically coming back, and this dog just ran right up to Eli and just went right on its back that day, and just was so overly loving that I've never seen a dog ever do this in my life. And I have a dog, and like I said, this dog was just loving on Eli. I was blown away by it. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. So we go back up, and actually I had my dog with a dog sitter in the area, and I knew Eli loved dogs, but I think I needed a break from my dog, and that's why I didn't bring the dog up, and I kind of wish I did. So yeah, we had a great food, went back up, just chilled for a minute, and then the sun started to set. And I don't know if you guys know about the sunsets at Eli's place, but he had an amazing sunset, and it was just this red glowing sunset that night. And we're just hanging out, and we're looking at it, and I'm just, wait, man, just look at this sunset. He was like, wow, man, he's like, that is a sunset. And that was the beauty about Eli too, that, you know, we could just sit there and not say a word. We could just relax, and we just sat and watched that sunset. I don't know how long until it went down. And then I knew I had to go get my dog, and you know, half of me wanted to be that young kid again, to be like, Eli, can I stay over? You know, can I hang out a little bit longer? And you know, we got responsibilities now, so I was like, yeah, I'm with this guy. Half of me wishes I just did stay, and I just forced it on to be there. But I left, and got a call from Mike a few days later. Here we are. Just want to say that Eli was a really, really special person to me. And you would never meet anybody like that in your life. And I felt so honored to have someone like that to teach me. And I wouldn't be the man I am today without him.
You know, sometimes I think we all do, that no matter how much we've said, like, there's never enough that we can say. You know, Eli's soul was so strong and bright. There's an idea within faith that says that one candle lights many flames. And you never know who you're going to touch. And I think really just two things, you know, just to bring everything together and reflect on, is that it had a tremendous soul and spirit. You know, one of the greatest verses that I think about in the Bible, and I think about this with Eli, is it says that Jacob was very anxious in his life when he took the birthright from his brother wanted to kill him. He was really nervous. And God appears to him in a dream. We're all familiar with that, Jacob's ladder. And God says to him that I'm going to be with you. I'll watch you every step of the way. And then the Bible says that Jacob lifted up his feet. It doesn't say that he walked, he lifted up his feet. And the rabbis comment that he was so inspired by the promise that God was with him that his heart lifted his feet. And when I think about the strength of Eli, he's a person whose heart lifted his feet. He didn't see anything as an obstacle. He didn't see his limitations, but you know, he really, I think, taught all of us that if your mind's in the right place, anything is possible. Isaiah says in chapter 40, those who have faith in God, their strength will be renewed. They will grow wings like eagles. They will run and not walk. I mean, to think about all the places that he went, he could have easily just said, like, I can't. But he didn't. And all of us are faced with those sorts of things all the time. There's going to be plenty of things that will happen to us tomorrow or the next day where the world will say no, or there are things that will get in our way and we can choose just to kind of retreat. But Eli's a person who helps us understand that those things that we see are not walls, those are doorways. God is giving us a new portal to walk through a new one. I mean, that to me is so inspiring because rather than lament the darkness, and there's a lot of darkness in the world, his role in life was just to increase the light. And he did. To think that he made a lifelong friend from a 1-hour train ride. And a memory. You're right, 89% of the people will be driving down the road and see a garbage can in the middle. And most people would say, they get angry. What does it do? You say, you know what? It happens. I'll figure out a way to move it, and then I'll move forward. That's a very holy soul. My mom, I'm thinking about this, passed away from a brain aneurysm when she was 44, over 30 years ago. One of the things I said about my mom was that she was a stranger to no one. And I believe that we can say that about Eli. Imagine if we go to the next world, and I believe there is a next world, his soul is living, and they can say about all of us, he was a stranger to no one. No matter who I met, no matter what background they were, I recognize that they're created in God's image, and there's something holy for me to take from that relationship beyond what you do, but really to share a little bit of your soul. Because that's the way that we change the world. We change the world one person at a time, and he understood that. And I just want to conclude with his Hebrew name, Eliah, which we may know as in English, it's Elijah. So I don't know if you've seen Elijah before, anybody? Elijah shows up, at least, in the Jewish faith at the Passover Seder. He shows up at a Brit Milah, circumcision. He's basically known as somebody that comes in to help people. And this beautiful story that I think illustrates the kind of person that Eli was, but also what he should remind us of as well. There was a young man who developed himself, and he went to this mystic teacher of his, and he said, I'm at the place in my life where I want to see Elijah the prophet. The mystic says to me, you want to see Elijah the prophet? There's a widow in the forest with children. Go there for the Sabbath, for the weekend, and I promise you'll see Elijah the prophet. So he brings food and everything. He's there Friday night, Saturday night. Sunday he doesn't see Elijah. He comes back to the mystic and said, you promised me I would see Elijah the prophet. He says, take food again. Go back the next weekend, and I promise this time you'll see Elijah the prophet. He goes deep into the forest. He's within earshot of the widow. And the widow is there, and the child cries out to the mother and says, Mommy, where are we going to get food from for this Sabbath? The mother turns to the child and says, just like Elijah came last week, Elijah's going to come again. And he realized that he was the Elijah that this woman was waiting for. God is not asking us to change the world, but God is asking us to be like an Eli, to be an Elijah, to be the person in somebody's life, because no encounter is random, to try to spread a little bit of light. And Mark Twain said the two most important days of your life are the day when you're born and the day when we understand why. And I believe that Eli really tried to understand that if there's somebody else that comes into my orbit, God put that person here, and I want them leaving my conversation feeling better about themselves and better about the world around them. So my hope and prayer is that we each can take a little bit of his light. I don't know if we'll all be in the same room ever again for the rest of history. But you can look back on this moment, and when you're at work tomorrow, wherever you are, saying, I want to tell you something about this person that I knew, and I'm going to make a pledge to bring a little bit of his light to the world. I know for sure it'll be a great source of comfort to his family, all of us, and God willing, his memory will be a source of blessing for many, many years to come.